could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every...
My gosh, they call the opening day Black Sunday. It was supposed to be an international press day, so Walt issued these little tickets, they're cute little tickets, for 7,000 reporters from around the world to come see Disneyland the day before it opened, which was to be the Monday in 1955, in July. And somebody got a hold of one of these tickets and counterfeited them. So they opened the gates on that Sunday expecting 7,000 visitors, and they had 21,000. 21,000 people walked into their parks. The day was so hot that the asphalt they had poured was porous, and ladies in those days wore high heels, and the high heels stuck into the asphalt, and women were walking right out of their shoes onto hot asphalt. Walt heard that the water union had gone on strike the night before, and they were only going to deliver half the water that they had promised. So he had to shut down all the water fountains. So everybody was terribly thirsty. They just had one problem after another, and yet it was like a hostess having a party where she expected 7 people and had 21 show up. Despite all these problems, everyone left just awestruck by the wonder of Disneyland. And in Disney at Last, the 5 Kingdom Keepers find themselves in this world and having to help Walt Disney and Lillian Disney and everyone keep the park stable in the early parts of the days. The Return subset takes us back to 1955 and the creation of the real villains. So taking them away from Walt Disney's wonderful imagination and somehow turning them into bigger-than-life villains that can walk the streets and terrify the good characters after dark when everyone leaves. And this subset is a 3-book trilogy, the last of which is Disney at Last. And in Disney at Last, we go into Disneyland maybe 2 weeks after the park has opened, and all sorts of nefarious things are happening, and these 5 Kingdom Keepers who've sort of Back to the Future traveled back to 1955 are realizing that they are there at the start of the Disney villains as overtakers, villains that want to take over the park. And if they can prevent that, maybe they can prevent all the mischief that happens in earlier Kingdom Keepers books. We've sold millions of these books now, and 50% of them have been bought and read by adults. When I do my signings, I have as many adults show up as do kids. And really what's fun is when they become the whole family. So, you know, mom and dad sit down to read the first book with their young children, and eventually the kids take the book away from mom and dad, and you know, after a while, the kids are reading it on their own, and the parents are stealing it back and reading it on their own. It's really fun. I think we're all caught up in that imagination and magic of Disney. And when we allow ourselves to give over to that imagination, it's kind of a new and wonderful world. And hopefully, the Kingdom Keepers and books like Disney at Last do that. We have such a great community of readers, I can't tell you. For one of the books, I asked the readers to vote on and write passages to a novel I was working on, and we ended up with 150,000 kids from around the world voting on the direction the book would take and then writing passages that I actually clipped and put into the book. The Kingdom Keepers community, which is now millions strong, is so fun. I get ideas from my readers. I have the most incredible time when I see them in lines at signings. It's really fun to be a part of sort of a big squad of Kingdom Keepers readers. The Disney cruise ships. I've been on all 4 of the ships. I've taken long cruises on them. I absolutely adore that world, and in that world, they let me into part of the ships that nobody ever sees, and that's really what the books do, is they go backstage and behind the scenes. So when you read a Kingdom Keepers book, if you love Splash Mountain, you'll see a side to Splash Mountain you've never seen, or if you love Epcot, you'll see the back part of Epcot that you're never allowed to see. And that's what energizes me and keeps me so excited. So for Disney at Last, it was 1955. You know, how could I see it? It's changed so much, but Becky Klein runs the Disney Archives out in Burbank, and they've let me visit the archives multiple times now. And they have this amazing photo library as part of the archives. So I've gotten to go and read notes between Walt and the Imagineers when they were making these attractions. I've seen photographs, 5,000 photographs of opening day, and I try to recreate that for my readers and let them go into a Disney that they've just never seen. She is. Maleficent scares me to death. And I work closely with the Disney Imagineers, who are the people who imagine the next big attraction. So right now they're working on Pandora, which is Avatar. They're working on Star Wars Land. These people, men and women, they're just so creative and wonderful. And they've learned that I'm scared of Maleficent. So, and I just am, because I've had to imagine her in these books. So when I go into the parks, I've been into the parks, I think, 30 times after dark when the parks are shut down. And on a couple of occasions, the Imagineers are pranksters. And so on a couple of occasions, I have turned the corner at like 4 in the morning, pitch black, nothing going on in the park, and there's Maleficent, dressed in her full regalia. And she goes, "Ridley, what are you doing in my park?" And I just turn and run, and they get this big laugh out of it, but it scares me to death. One of the things that shocked me the most was being inside the Magic Kingdom, which is like Disneyland. I was on It's a Small World at 5 in the morning, and the ride was shut down. They turned on just the boat for me, so we were under emergency lighting. That crazy song that goes through your head all day long, if you hear it, wasn't playing, and the dolls were all static. They were all shut down. And all of a sudden, 2 of the dolls moved, and I just jumped out of my seat. And the guy I was with said, "What's wrong with you?" And I went, 2 of those dolls just moved. So in the book, I have all of the dolls move. But it's that kind of crazy thing that if you don't go and do the research, you'd never see. I saw 2 of those dolls move. So there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that you just can't imagine, like being in the Haunted Mansion with the lights on, which I've now done 4 or 5 times. And it is even scarier with the lights on, because there's stuff in there you don't see in the dark that when the lights are on, you go, "Whoa, I'm glad I didn't see that when I was going through the ride." I met Dave Barry through the Rock Bottom Remainders, and I told him I was taking my family down to Disney World. And Dave said, "Not without me, you're not. I know a lot more about it than you do," because I'd never been. And I said, "Well, that's true, Dave. You know more about everything than I." And I kind of wanted to one-up him, so I got my publisher at the time, Hyperion, to sort of pave the way. And they treated us like rock stars. And we had the trip of our lives. And in that trip, we were leaving after the fireworks along with 60,000 other people. And I looked around, and no Disney characters were leaving the park. And I thought, what do they do while we're asleep? And that gave birth to this series of books called The Kingdom Keepers, and The Return is a little subset in that series. The new book is called Disney at Last.